super excited to get to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better. Before we get kind of into the Kyrol stuff and the stuff that you're working on your channel, tell me a little bit about your experience as just a Star Wars fan. What's your what's your earliest memory of Star Wars? Do you remember the first movie that you went to go see in theaters?
I actually do remember the first one I went to go see in theaters. I think it was actually the first movie I ever saw in theaters. It was the Clone Wars animated movie. My mom took me to
Okay,
see that. So I
very
don't
cool.
remember how old I was. I think I was like 7. So it was technically the first Star Wars movie I ever saw in theaters.
That's cool. So you were 7, and that's I see. I don't remember going to see that one. Journeyman, did you go watch the Clone Wars animated the movie in theaters?
No, I never did. I knew what, or after the fact, of course, I knew it came out as a movie, but I never knew it came out in the theaters. I just thought it was for the show.
Yeah, I don't even remember it, to be honest. The first movie I went to see in theaters, I know for sure, was Revenge of the Sith. I was probably about the same age as you, Andrew. I was probably around 7, and I probably went to go see it 7 times in the theater because I loved it so
Yeah, I
much.
just barely missed out on that one.
Yeah, I was like, you're probably just a little bit too young to go
Yeah,
see
2002.
Anakin.
That came out 2005. 3 years
Okay,
old.
yeah, a 3-year-old probably shouldn't be watching Anakin get burned alive. So.
No.
Or Dooku's head chopped off. There's a couple of things in there that probably aren't suitable for that age, but that's cool. So you went to see. I mean, the animated series is a little bit more probably up. Probably was more age appropriate for you at the time. What's your favorite Star Wars movie, though?
That's actually Revenge of the Sith, although a
Is it
very
really?
close second is Return of the Jedi.
Okay, why is Revenge of the Sith your favorite?
Um, I just like seeing the fall of Anakin Skywalker, despite me knowing it's going to happen. I'm always like, Anakin, don't do it. Please don't do it. Just do the right thing for once. But it's like I just really enjoy the movie. The score alone is easily the best out of all the movies. How John Williams didn't get an Oscar for that, I will never know.
Yeah, no, I love how you said that because I think I saw Journeyman's laugh too because that's what we always behind the scenes when him and I are just talking about things. Revenge of the Sith is our favorite movie too, and it's like it's the scene where he's in the chambers of the Jedi
Oh, that's my
Council, and it's
favorite
just
scene.
right, and it's just like don't do it, don't do it, don't do it,
Yeah.
and every time your heart wants it to not happen, and it's like it's a movie, dude, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's awesome though. Yeah, so okay, Revenge of the Sith is your favorite, and then Return of the Jedi is a close second.
Yeah, those are probably the two I've watched the most. I could probably recite most of the Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi verbatim if I really thought about it.
Really.
Yeah.
That's funny. So do you consider yourself a would you consider yourself more of like a casual fan, or are you like one of those deep dive like
I'd say I'm in between.
okay.
I'm very deep into the lore, but I will be the first to admit I don't know everything. So when I learn something new, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
generally speaking, I'm in between.
yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's kind of how I would describe myself as well. Is I don't read a lot of the books. I'm trying to read some of the books via audiobooks. I'm not actually
Yeah.
reading them, but the comics and stuff. Do you tend to check out the books or anything, or are you more just media?
The media in general. I did read the Light of the Jedi by Charles, or yeah, I think it was by Charles Soule. I actually really enjoyed that book. It was in the High Republic, and I'm like,
Okay.
I'll check it out. And so far, it was actually pretty good, which is interesting. Most people think the High Republic sucks.
Yeah. No. I mean, so is that the
That's
only
not even
thing?
counting the Acolyte situation, but besides that,
Yeah, I was like that. Then you factor in the acolyte with everything that went on. So you've only checked out. Is it the Light of the Jedi? Have you read any of the other High Republic stuff?
I haven't, but I did like watch some lore videos about some of the stuff because I got curious, and that's honestly been my new favorite era, at least in the Disney era.
Is the High Republic stuff?
Yeah, because
That's really cool.
it's different. It's not Jedi versus Sith. It's Jedi versus other things.
What are your thoughts on all the Disney era stuff? I mean, you said you like the High Republic, but Are you a fan of all the TV series and things like that, or?
It varies depending on the show, really and truly. Some of them I like more than others. Like most people love Andor. I couldn't personally get into it. It just didn't interest me the way a lot of other people did. I will still stand by that it is the most well-made show with very goodly written. Cinematography is next level, but just I personally couldn't enjoy it. Ahsoka, on the other hand, that was the one I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny you say that. Because I'm. So let me ask you this before I say what I'm about to say. Have you gone back and watched Andor since it first came out in, what was it, 2022?
I did go back to rewatch it, and I still like it. I like it a little bit more, but it's still like, okay, this one isn't for me. I'll still check out season 2 just because I'm like, oh, why not? It might surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, that's what I was gonna say. I've been working my way through it just because before you hopped on. Actually, I was talking to Journeyman, and I'm on episode 11 now, and I will say, it's not my favorite Star Wars stuff. I tend to lean more and appreciate the mythology and the Force and things like that a little bit more. But in terms of it being, if I classify it in my mind as like a political thriller, which it kind of is, right? It helps me
Yeah.
make a little bit more sense of it. And during my rewatch, I've learned to appreciate it more. I think it also helps to be able to watch the episodes back to back.
Yeah, that definitely helped me instead of waiting for each episode. That's kind of what I'm going to do with season 2. Just let the whole thing come out and then watch it.
There you go. So are you a fan of the format they're taking with, releasing them 3 episodes at a time?
I think it's an interesting format, but I think it really all depends on the show. Like some when to end it to get people invested. Like I'll use Ahsoka as an example. When at the end of episode 4, when Anakin showed up, I was like, "Yep, that's right where you should end it," because that makes people want to go see the next episode. Versus some of the others where I'm like, "You could have ended that 20 minutes earlier."
Mm-hmm. Weren't we just talking about that, Journeyman?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think he said it the best. It's like you know when to end it, when not to end it. It's just kind of the time management part of it. Like, where will audiences most likely gain from, or where will you most likely gain audiences from and keep them engaged rather than trying to drag it out?
Well, it's like we were just talking on the phone, was it a couple weeks ago, about how Disney, even in the Marvel shows, and I don't know, Andrew, how much you watch the Marvel shows. Are you a big Marvel fan?
I'm definitely was more so when it was mostly in the movies, but I like some of the shows. Moon Knight was my favorite.
Okay. Well, and I think Moon Knight did this pretty well, if I remember correctly. But I feel like Disney has not been able to master like the TV show format, and exactly what you're
They
saying,
haven't.
Andrew. Is like episode 4 of Ahsoka is really good for a number of different reasons. But one of the best reasons is the way that they leave the cliffhanger off with Anakin. And it's not just because it's Anakin, it's because it's a real cliffhanger. And none of the other shows do
Like
that,
you
in my
see her in the
opinion.
world between worlds, you're like, did someone pull her in there? Is this all in her head? Why is Anakin here? Why am I hearing Darth Vader's theme?
Uh-huh. And it's like, honestly, like I just said, it's not even so much that Anakin was there. You probably, for the not the casual fan, but more of a fan like us who knows about the things going on and the different shows. They could have just had her in the world between worlds without, and
Yeah,
maybe play Vader's theme, and that would have been an awesome cliffhanger. But
or
they
just
can't
have,
seem
or just hear hello Snips and
exactly.
cut.
Exactly, but they can't seem to master that. And that's what Journeyman and I were talking about. Is like you can honestly, or maybe that was on a live stream. Were we talking about that on a live stream, Journeyman? I can't
I
remember.
can't remember. I can't remember.
But we were talking about that, and I was like, one of the only other things besides, and that's a good example, Andrew. I had forgotten about that one, but I think one of the only other things that comes close to that is the season 2 of The Mandalorian, the first episode with Boba Fett at the very end.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. Like, and that's, once again, I guess these are bad, maybe not bad examples is not what I'm trying to say, but both of those involve cameos. And I don't think it has to be a cameo, but it's just like
just
they got
knowing
to,
when to end it.
yeah, it's like if you are going to release these one at a time throughout the span of a couple months, it's like you got to master how to keep people engaged. And so, yeah, I hope. Seems like they haven't been able to master that, and so I hope that at the very least, this new format with Andor, they're able to keep fans watching throughout the duration of the whole season, because I want them to succeed. I want to, I want to see these projects make money and be talked about in a positive light. But it makes it hard when I feel like they don't know how to, keep fans engaged.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. Are you excited for Ahsoka season 2 then?
Oh, I'm definitely excited, especially because where it ended with, especially with Balin. I distinctly remember this. I was watching with my parents. The second I saw the Mortis gods, I started freaking out, and they were like, "Why are you freaking out?" I'm like, "It's something from one of the shows. It's majorly important."
I will say I went back. I was taking a look at some of your videos recently, just in preparation to talk to you, and I think it was in your 500 subscriber special. You were talking about the Clone Wars being your favorite, like actual TV series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's your favorite arc of the Clone Wars? Is the Mortis arc up there?
It's the Mortis arc, but a very close second is the Siege of Mandalore arc because of the Revenge of the Sith ties. When you realize, oh, we're like when he says Anakin killed Count Dooku, I'm like, oh, we're right into Revenge of the Sith. So now it's like Alfred Hitchcock. It's the ticking time bomb. Like, when is it going to happen?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
constantly on the edge of your seat.
Yeah. And they've isn't that crazy how that just came out a few years ago too, within 2020.
That was right during COVID. Jeez.
It was. Yeah. I remember because I was in school, Journeyman and I were in school, college. I remember we had started off watching it, and then COVID hit, and then we all kind of had to go our separate ways. But yeah, it's crazy how recent that seems, and I'm curious. I know that they're going to have a Ahsoka panel at Star Wars Celebration, and do you have any guesses on what they might announce at Star Wars Celebration? Or I'm wondering if they're going to drop an animated series, but I don't know.
Honestly, I just want another animated series. Those seem to be like some of their best work. I want more Star Wars Visions, personally. That was one of my favorites. Specifically
Really,
episode 4. That was the best episode of all of Star Wars Visions. Because it took
season 1 or season 2?
season 1, The Village Bride.
Season 1.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back, and I haven't seen those
It's the
episodes
one
in a
with
really long
the
time.
Jedi lady with the mask.
Okay, yeah, I remember. Okay, yeah,
It was my favorite episode because it talked about the Force the way George would always talk about it. And it's like,
Okay.
while this world calls it something different, it's still technically the same thing. So that's a big part of it. I'm like, they get it right.
So let's talk about that then, because I feel like in Kyrol,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the Legend of Kyrol, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
what
it's
the
the Legend of
umbrella of all.
Kyrol.
Okay,
Yeah.
I feel like you're drawing on a lot of inspiration from George. So tell us a little bit about Kyrol, what Kyrol is, the characters, the time period that it takes place in, and kind of the format of how you package it on your channel.
So, firstly, The Legend of Kyrol is an audio-based audiobooks type series, and it follows a young Jedi Padawan named Kyrol Novak. Like during the transition from the Old Republic into the High Republic, because didn't do much research, just a quick Google search, but there was like 500-year difference, so there's 500 years of untold stories, so that's where I set the series. And then I specifically chose Kyrol specifically because he was supposed to be a reflection of myself, like how I would act in these kinds of situations, even though he looks a little different than me, but that's beside the point. Trying to think what else. Basically throughout the series he fights many different enemies, a Sith cult, Jedi traitors, and all while dealing with his own struggles with the dark side, love, loss, everything.
Very
And he
cool.
starts
So,
the story at 16 and ends, I'd say, mid 30s.
oh,
Haven't
wow, okay.
decided exactly when.
Okay, so he starts at 16. So I know, and I'm not going to spoil it, just as a FYI, because I want people to go watch it, and I'll make sure to put a link to your channel in the description, and also a link to that playlist so that they can go,
Yep.
people can go look at the Legend of Kyrol in its entirety, because you
Just
package it
be
really
warned,
well.
people. There is AI narration and voices for the foreseeable future. I am getting voice actors for the characters, including myself, to voice Kyrol.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Yeah,
so
I've
just
seen
fair
it.
warning.
I've
I know that can
seen.
turn people off immediately,
Well, I mean,
which I
it
get.
it. I mean, yeah, it. Honestly, I'm kind of a stickler for that kind of thing, Andrew. And I remember when I listened to this project that we're talking about, The Legend of Kyrol. What's the first book called? Jedi Apprentice, right?
Kyrol Jedi Apprentice, and the second one is called Kyrol New Horizon, and the third one is going to be called Kyrol the Rising Shadow.
Okay, so you have currently Jedi
Two.
Apprentice and New
Yeah.
Horizon. New Horizon's complete, right?
Yeah, New Horizon's complete. So
Okay,
2 full complete books.
okay, because I've only finished Jedi Apprentice. I'm working my way through New Horizon right now. But so you said he starts at the age of 16, based in the transition period between the Old Republic and the High Republic.
Yeah.
And it's following just like his struggles with love, loss, the dark side, battling different types of villains and things like that. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it, but at the very beginning, he does start off. Does he start off younger than 16?
Yeah,
At the
he
very,
starts
very.
out, I don't think I said it, but he's like 8 to 10 years old. It was basically right after he became a Padawan.
Okay, and he goes to Ilum, right?
Ilum to get his crystal.
Okay, so that's how it starts off to get his
Yep.
crystal, build a saber, and you have Hu Yang in there, which is really cool.
Yep.
And that's all I'll let you spoil what else you want to spoil, but that's like right at the beginning. So hopefully that will hook people right in.
Oh, and here's a fun fact, everyone. Kyrol actually has a crossguard lightsaber, a blue crossguard.
That's right, and you say that in the first book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very
And
cool.
it's literally
So-
in the cover too, so
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is it kind of like Kylo's saber?
and it's kind of, but he can deactivate and reactivate the Quillen blade separately.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So if he has to spin it behind the back, he can just quickly deactivate it so he doesn't end up cutting himself in the process.
Yeah, that's
And-
really neat.
And I added a bit of lore because, like in Jedi Survivor, Cal Kestis's crossguard is a lot heavier. Kyrol's is the same way, so he uses a lot more powerful strikes, and specifically uses Form 5, like as his main form to complement that. So I
Very
really
cool.
went in like trying to figure out each character's form.
Yeah, you've went really in depth with it, which is why I like it, because that's where I was going with this question is where are you drawing on this inspiration for the story? I know you said Kyrol is kind of like a yourself in a way, choices that you would make if you were in this galaxy.
Yeah.
But what inspired you to create this channel to channel the story of Kyrol?
So to start, I always had different ideas for stories in my head. I even starting a series called Kyrol's Cut Concepts, where the first one I talked about 3 different story concepts before landing on this one. But my biggest inspiration was watching Concordia Jedi, who's another Star Wars creator. He
Okay.
did a series called The Book of Cassius. And it said during like in the trying to remember what was the time period. Oh yeah, it was like the prequels into the era of the Empire, and just his story. I'm not going to spoil anything, but his story just at certain points I actually got really emotional, and at the end I actually cried.
Really?
So I'm like, I want to tell a story like this, something that really gets the people invested. So that's kind of where it started, and then I went through 3 different rough drafts. One where Kyrol wasn't named Kyrol; he was called something else, where he'd already be a knight trying to take on an apprentice. Then there was another one that was a set of Sith twins and their struggles with the dark side eventually becoming Jedi. How that whole situation turns out. Which I might want to go back and rewrite that one because I actually kind of liked how that one's going.
Well, yeah, draw on that inspiration and throw it into this universe. And it sounds like
Well,
some really cool.
I say you should do the second one. We don't see a lot of stories going from bad to good. We always see them going from good to bad, in my opinion. I would like to
Yeah.
hear that story.
If I remember correctly, they were raised as Sith, so they were like indoctrinated into the Sith Order. And this part I do remember. At a certain point, they, like Ahsoka, she purifies her kyber crystals. They do the same thing. So they're Jedi with white kyber crystals.
Very cool.
Oh, I
Yeah,
like that.
that's really cool.
I don't
Yeah,
remember the context behind it, but that's what happened.
well, and yeah, it's not like you can. And I remember this is what I kind of had talked to you about. I was like, it'd be really cool if you're up for it one day, and I can finally get around to it. If I could, figure out a way to tell similar type stories on this channel, and it would be kind of fun to put them all in the same universe and have them cameo from time to
Yeah,
time.
which I kind of am doing that a little bit with another creator.
Oh, you are cool, very cool.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Oh, that's going good because, well, while his is set in a different time period, we kind of found ways to kind of reference each other. Like one of his characters and my characters, they actually get to interact. I won't say which one, but they do get to interact for a little
Very
bit.
cool.
So
That's
he's
very
acts
cool.
like another mentor figure.
What channel is this?
It's A21 Edits.
Okay. That's the Discord. All right.
Yep.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's something that I want to take on. I love storytelling, and I'm trying in my downtime outside of doing, Star Wars content and stuff. I have a book project that I'm actually trying to work on, and so I really relate to the type of stories and find the Kyrol series in particular very inspiring. Makes me want to go back and work on that project and try to see it, and also, like I said, work on things here. Tell me how you approach storytelling. Do you do a lot of outlining? Do you
I
what?
definitely do outlining
Okay,
because my brain can't just write straight out the gate.
so when
Like for the whole series, I actually planned out the whole series before I even wrote any books.
really, okay, so
Yeah.
that's what you said. He's 33 at the end of this, so
Give or take.
okay, so you know exactly where this story is going.
Yeah. At least in a general sense. Obviously, I make changes along the way if something doesn't work or if I think it needs to be cut or redone. Like I actually cut a whole character out of the second book because it wasn't working.
Wow. Okay. How long have you been working on this?
I think I've been writing I wrote the first book like in May and then started the channel basically right after I had finished the first book. But I was also slowly writing the second book, so it's been like a constant process since last May.
Last May. Okay. So I'm sorry, I missed that at the beginning. This is when you started outlining and like really getting the story fully fleshed out, or when you first published the video?
When I fully published the video was in May, but I've been outlining the story I think since March.
Okay.
So it's been a process.
Yeah. Well, it's super fast turnaround time too. What made you? I know you said your inspiration came from another channel. Did you have any intent? Was that always the intention? Was to package it as like an audio book?
Yeah, that was always the intention because it was A, easier, and B, I'm actually in a digital media for college right now, so I could actually apply what I'm learning and that into the Kyrol series. So I'm using all the Adobe products for the Kyrol series.
Okay, very cool. And that was something else I was going to ask you is what goes into creating all of your stuff, all your concept art and your music, because you create your own music, at
Some of
least
them.
some of them, right? Yeah. How do you go
Yeah.
about doing all that? Like what goes into the overall production?
So for the actual books themselves, I write them all out myself. I don't use any AI for that, so that's all me. Then I take, at least for the first two books, this is going to change for the rest of them, but first two books, since I had AI, I had one for the narration, get all that, download it, and then basically repeat for each character until I had all of it. And some of them I had to adjust because I needed an emotional range that they didn't have with the stock voice. So I had to redo that for that. Then I go into Adobe Audition. Then I just, with the actual story at my side, like line everything up to where all the dialogue's together. And then from there, add effects, music, and all that. And most of the music's generally stock music because it's just easier than trying to deal with the licensing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the production quality, and that's what I was saying. I'm kind of a stickler for that. I don't like to listen to something that's, for lack of the better word, trash. I don't know a better way to say it right off the
Yeah,
top
I
of my
get
head.
you.
But
Bland.
bland.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
that's a nicer way to put it. But yours is really good. I mean that like genuinely. Like the production quality that you're putting into it, and it's only going to get better, right? With
Yeah.
the auditions that you're actually going to be bringing in real humans to voice these lines, right?
Yep. At least for most of them. I think for one person, because I have another series for her, which I'll just say the name of the series. The series is called is Lessons with Master Casino, which is Kyrol's master. It's basically just talking about different Jedi lore. That way, I don't need someone for that. I can, if I needed to make an episode, I can do it right then and there instead of having to worry about waiting for the actor to get the lines and everything.
So where do you get the inspiration? So I know you said Kyrol is you draw the inspiration from you. What about the other characters? Where do you get their
So
inspiration from?
some of them is just general personality traits that I've gotten from other people or I've seen from other people. Um, One of Carol's best friend, Liam, is very similar to one of my good friends. Always has my back, always has my best interest in heart. But at the same time, someone you don't want to make angry who has his own struggles. As for Daisha, can't remember exactly what inspired her, but she was also inspired by one of my friends because of the sarcastic attitude. She's very sarcastic, which is a lot like Daisha.
Mm-hmm.
As for Master Kazina and Donwin, not really much inspiration. It was just figuring out what worked for them.
Yeah. Do you find certain parts of the story harder to write than others? Like,
Almost definitely.
okay, because I like I said, I'm in the process of writing something myself, and I was curious. Do you find like is a fight scene harder to write than
Oh my
you
gosh, it
know?
is the hardest thing to write.
Yeah, I haven't actually had to do it yet, but there's a couple of moments where it's gonna happen. And I'm like, I don't know how to put what I'm seeing in my head onto to paper.
Yeah, like if you since you've finished Jedi Apprentice, you could kind of tell that the action, while still pretty descriptive, wasn't really the best. It wasn't something I was like the most familiar with. Like, what are some of the terms you could use in certain situations? But I've slowly started to learn some more of the terms and just generally how to be more descriptive with the action, like saying like Cairo sidesteps before doing a forward jab, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not easy to do.
No, it's not because you see it, but trying to translate it is impossible.
Yeah,
Although writing certain dialogue pieces can be a nightmare at times.
give me an example of that.
Um, Trying to think of one that's not spoilery.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I was just trying to think. Well, yeah, there's one in the first book where Kyrol, it's either first or second, I forget which, but Kyrol and Liam are talking, and I knew what I wanted them to say, but it was just trying to translate it into a way that made sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because it's hard to capture some of those. Once again, you see it in your head how you want it to play out, and when you actually start to write it, it's like this probably only makes sense to me. I'm like, do you really think other people, are other people going to grasp what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But I think you do a really, really good job. I I keep saying it, but the production quality and the dialogue, it really makes you feel like you're in the Star Wars universe, which I hope is your intention, because
Yeah, it
that's how
is.
it
I
made me
like
feel.
for certain phrases, like if I wanted to, like instead of actually using actual cuss words, I wanted the characters to like, what would someone actually say in this universe? So it's like Criff is a very common one. So they go like, what the Criff is that?
Uh-huh. So do you have, I mean, it would seem that you have some background in writing then, or is this all just learning as you go?
Um, it's mostly learning as I go, but I did take a few creative writing class once, and one of my high school teachers was very into creative writing, so that kind of helped too. So it was just what I learned from those, and then just tried it as I went, learning as I go, more descriptive, but not too descriptive, long, but not too long,
Yeah.
knowing properly when to end a chapter, because that is the hardest thing to do.
Well, yeah, and then here we are complaining that Disney can't do it, or at least not complaining that Disney can't do it, but they're supposed to be professionals, so they should know how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I feel like I'm getting a taste of what it takes to write it, and like what George kind of had to go through to start this whole universe of like
Yeah.
how to write it, because he always said like, you know, even I think Dave describes it like he could see what is happening in his mind, and he would just be like, okay, I need you to go do it now. And it's like,
Yeah, and
well,
they're
how
like,
can we, yeah,
yeah,
how can we do it? It's in your head. He's like,
yeah,
it'll be fun. Just go do it. I
yeah.
feel
I've
like
always
that's what
said
I'm
George
getting.
isn't a great director. He's a great storyteller.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so what, to kind of full circle back, what inspiration, what's your favorite inspiration to draw on from? Like, it would seem that you kind of gravitate towards the George Lucas stuff, am I right?
Yeah, I kind of gravitate towards that just because it's something I'm more familiar with. I mean, I grew up more with the Disney canon, as when the buyout happened, I was like 11, 12. That's when I really started to get into Star Wars lore. But I really gravitated towards Lucas while also incorporating the Disney canon, because I'm of the opinion, as long as it's not contradicting something that's pre-established from Lucas, it can, or if it's not contradicting something that you've already established, it should fit just fine. Maybe retweak it slightly, and after all, it's a fan story. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, once again, I tell you, it is a fan story, but you listen to it, and when you really start to get immersed into the story of Kyrol, you're like, this fits right into the universe, and it is kind of, to me, it's kind of hard to distinguish. In my mind, I'm seeing these characters in the canon universe of Star Wars that I know, and I mean that genuinely. I think it's really great storytelling, and you did it really, I would say, smart too, because you picked a time period where there's not a lot of, like you said, things going on, so you kind of have
Yeah.
free reign into what you're actually able to do in terms of storytelling. So
Because at one point I was almost tempted to have it set in the prequel trilogy, but then I'm like, that's a lot of stuff that I have to map out even more so. It's like, because it'd be cool to have Kyrol interact with Anakin, but then he's interacting with Anakin.
mm-hmm.
And where would I want him to end? Would I want him to survive Order 66? Would I want him to die in Order 66? And that's how his story ends, very abruptly.
Yeah, that would be, it is hard to map out. I thought about that too, and I was thinking about doing like the project here on channels, where was this character fit in, and you do have the most free reign when it comes to like that High Republic era, Old Republic era, I guess. But yeah, it is. What made you decide to, and once again, we don't have to get into spoilers, but what made you decide to go with the villain in
No,
the, so, because okay, so uh well, I won't get into it because I don't want to spoil it, but there's a nefarious force in the first book, um that I know for sure because I finished the first book. What made you decide to go with that route, I guess, to keep it kind
because
of broad?
yeah, it mostly because like it's a Sith cult. That's as much as I'm going to say about it for what the villain type is. But I mostly chose that because A, it was an interesting concept. It's like you don't see many Sith cults. It's like what are other aspects of the Sith, not just the warriors who wield the red lightsabers and just bring death and destruction, but also because it's said after the Old Republic, the Sith are supposed to be gone. So, at least in all intents and purposes, the main line of Sith are supposed to be dead. No one's supposed to know about them. So when I introduced this cult, it was a neat workaround, and to have one of the characters be your quote Sith, but he's not technically a Sith, was a good workaround. Who I took a lot of inspiration from Kamir, from the Acolyte with that one, like the menacing type, generally way more powerful than all the Jedi he fights type of character.
Okay, so you drew on the Acolyte for some
Yeah.
inspiration then. Very cool. Well, okay, but I'm trying to think of the timeline here though, because did you have the you said you kind of started scripting this out in March of last year. Acolyte didn't come out in June, so did you kind of have to rework that character?
I kind of reworked it after I
Uh-huh.
saw like the teaser of the Acolyte when it showed or it was one of the trailers where it actually showed his helmet. I'm like, and just the posture. I was like, that's where I kind of reworked that character into that because I'm like, that's a really cool concept for a character like more of a silent killer type
Mm-hmm.
who only
Well,
talks these two.
yeah, and the Sith cult that you referenced uh, is one of the cooler parts of the Rise of Skywalker, in my opinion. The
Oh
Sith
yeah,
Eternal, and you don't get to see that. You like
yeah.
that's very interesting.
And the whole planet
Uh,
of Exegol.
yeah,
It's like, what is this planet?
it's like where did it come from? All these questions that really never got answered, or maybe they're starting to get answered, but in not in the mainstream, Disney Plus or in movies. Have you read the Shadows of the Sith book?
I think I've read a bit. I'm probably just going to go back and reread the whole thing
Yeah,
just to make sure.
it's I'm listening to the audiobook on Spotify right now, and it's really good. It gives a lot of background, and it kind of helps shape the sequel trilogy, in my opinion, a little bit better. It talks about Exegol and how Rey's dad, the clone of Palpatine, gets off of
Yeah.
Exegol, um, and really like kind of ties some things up a little bit. Um, I don't know if it goes into the Sith Eternal or the Sith Cult yet, but I'm hoping it does because that was always one of the more fascinating parts of the Rise of Skywalker to me. So it was really cool to see how you drew on that. I don't know if that was your inspiration for
It
that,
actually
but
was.
it was okay
Like, I
because
remember seeing a bit of Sith Eternal. I'm like, these guys are cool. Why haven't we done more with them? You know what? Let me do it myself.
there you go. And you got to believe it. I mean, it's believable, right? It's like
Yeah.
instead of having the Sith Lord running around in your story,
Where it's
it's
like,
these
why are you here?
exactly you're drawing on something that it's different but also feasible and makes sense in the context of your story. So
Yeah.
that's really neat. Really neat. I'm excited to dig in more to New Horizon. I think I'm on chapter 2 or chapter 3 right now. I could tell you stepped up your game. The
Oh
first
yeah.
book was great, but the second book, New Horizon, I
Out of the
will.
two, that was probably the one I enjoyed writing the most. Especially, I think it was chapter 5 or it was I think it was chapter 6 onwards. Those were my 3 favorites to write.
Chapter 6. You're saying everything past chapter 6 of New
Yeah.
Horizon. Okay. I'm excited to check it out because it's an 8 chapter one, right?
Yeah, it's an 8 chapter.
Okay.
And unless something changes, the Rising Shadow will be a 16 chapter.
Okay.
So it's going to be a longer one.
With the audiobook. And so just as an FYI for people who will listen, if they are you currently still accepting doing auditions or
I am
signups?
still currently accepting auditions. I'm probably going to make another post with talking about the same one just so everyone can find it again because I still need voice actors, specifically female ones. I haven't gotten any of those yet.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can put it in the description of this video. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want me to,
You
I would
can.
love, just send it to me. I'd love to be able to help you out with that because I think it's really cool what you're doing. 16 chapters.
I do kind of want to say I'm not in a position for paying, so this isn't a paying thing, but you do get credited for your work.
Cool. Yeah.
I just want to be upfront about that. That way, some people don't get the wrong impression.
They're like, "Where's my money?" They do the
Yeah.
whole thing, and it's like, "Where's my paycheck?"
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I think your storytelling ability, I think to take it outside of the Star Wars universe, have you ever thought about like actually doing something that's not within this IP that you could actually, I mean, you could monetize this stuff on YouTube. I don't see why there would be any
I
problem with
think as
that.
long as you're not really using any copyright infringement music, you should be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, you should be fine. But have you thought about publishing any type of work outside of the Star Wars universe?
I briefly thought about it, but I have some stories, but they were done so long ago that I don't remember squat about them. Honestly, my bigger thing was always been filmmaking.
Okay.
So I like actually making movies. That's kind of what I really want to do in some way, shape, or form.
How do you take Kyrol to the next level? Because right now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but right now you have you're about to have voice actors, and
Mhm.
so that will be taking it up a level, obviously. But right now, in the audiobooks, you do have different voices for the different characters, so you can distinguish who's talking.
Yep.
You have the sound effects after so you do the voice actors. How do you take it to the next level? What do you want to do?
Like I don't know, but that's tricky. It's like what I would love to really do is have it be like a full on animated thing at some point, like the whole series animated in some way, shape, or form. But that's definitely something I can't do right now. That would be like the big end game to like visually see things that are happening instead of just imagining it in your head.
And there's some magic to that though, right? Because
Yeah.
as a reader, it's kind of it's fun to be able to picture
Oh
what's
yeah,
going on in your
definitely.
head. But what I was wondering is if you had any intention of kind of visually depicting the story in any type of way. Have you ever? Do you create your characters through AI?
Yeah, I use an AI art generator for the characters and any of like other artwork that I do for like I did a Christmas thing a while like when Christmas happens, like characters celebrating Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I did an AI art thing for that. Some of them are easier than others. It really all depends on who I'm trying to describe.
Have you ever thought about doing AI to capture certain scenes and kind of throwing those into the video to depict the general sense of what's happening?
I thought about that. That was actually something I tried to do when I was editing the first one, but it wasn't really working out the way I wanted. Like, if it was just a general scene where like Kyrol walking through the snow, yeah, that was easy. But anything describing fights, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do well enough. So I'm like, I'm just not going to bother with that idea
Yeah, I could definitely do that. I can definitely see that.
because the
Well,
lightsabers get all kind of wonky, and especially when your AI art generator does not like trying to do cross guards well.
that's
Like
funny.
if you listen to the Kyrol track music, the first one, A Jedi Journey, that took for just those three with the crossguard took like 17 to 30 attempts just to get those. Everything else
Wow.
was easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I've messed around with the AI stuff just a little bit, and I know exactly the headache you're talking about, where it just doesn't come out quite how you need it to. It doesn't. It's really good at doing a lot of things, but lightsaber, especially the hilts, doesn't seem to
Yeah.
do that very
Hilts I'm
well.
not really too big on. Like if I wanted to do that, I'd probably draw it myself.
Yeah, yeah. It just can't. AI can't quite grasp the concept of a lightsaber hilt for some reason. That's funny. So you said that your background and your focus is really in, or what can't remember exactly what you said, so you correct me. But your filmmaking, I know
Yeah.
on your channel, in addition to the Legend of Kyrol and that project, you do a lot of like trailer edits and
Yeah,
things like
that's
that.
just something I've loved to do because it's an interesting idea. It's like, let's take this music. I'm going to use my most recent one. Let's take the Last of Us 2 trailer music from the most recent trailer and put it with Jedi Survivor. Let's see how we can make that work. And lo and behold, I made that work.
Well, I think my favorite one is you took the Deadpool and Wolverine
Oh
soundtrack
yeah, that one was fun.
and the style of that trailer. Journeyman, you'll have to go check this out. But he takes the Deadpool Wolverine soundtrack of the trailer and the overall artistic style of the wording and
Yeah.
stuff, and applies it to Revenge of the Sith and creates a trailer out of that, which I think is really funny and really cool.
I always watch the trailer as I'm doing it just to try to get an idea of what they were going for versus how I'm going to do it. And I always try to remain as spoiler free as possible because it's more fun that way.
Well, and it's a challenge, right? Because I
Yeah.
can tell when you're doing these that you are doing this, and it's you tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like almost why you like to do this is because it's challenging. Am I right?
Yeah, it's more challenging instead of just having like, let's say I'm going to do Empire Strikes Back. Oh, I'm actually going to say Darth Vader's Luke's father. Why would I say that? It's a
Yeah.
big part of the movie.
You're taking this, creating a trailer as if it were really for the movie, but it's not that
Yeah.
simple. You're layering it on top of another style of a trailer, and I could
Yeah.
tell, I don't know if this is your intention, but it's like they're good, first of all, but it's like you could tell that you're not just doing it for the fun of it. You're really trying to give yourself a challenge.
Yeah. And it's something I can show people. It's like if I get into more like official editing business, I'm like, this is something I can do. If you needed me to do something like this, here you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're creating a portfolio for yourself at
Yeah.
the same time. Where does that, what gave you the idea to do these trailer edits?
That's something I've seen. I've seen a bunch of them over the years. I can't remember which one it was that got me really. Oh wait, I remember now. It was someone took Guardians of the Galaxy 3 music and paired it with the Last of Us video game, the first one, and that just like blew my mind with how well it fit because I'm like, this shouldn't work. Guardians of the Galaxy with the Last of Us, but it worked. But I've also just like watching movie trailers even after they release. Like sometimes I like to go back and watch the Man of Steel trailers because of how good they were and the music and the way they were edited. Which I might want to do a Man of Steel one at some point. I might have to write that down. I got a list I have to get through.
No, you've got given yourself an idea. That's funny. And I saw you cranked out was it the one you were just talking about?
Yeah,
Jedi
The
Fallen
Last-
Order. Yeah,
Jedi Survivor.
Survivor. Yeah, and
Yeah.
with The Last of Us.
I did that in one night.
That's impressive. You had
Yeah.
the creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Well, I always keep the assets so that way I don't have to go and hunt them again.
Yeah, very cool. What gave you what made you want to start doing a YouTube channel just in general?
So I did do one while I was in middle school, but that really didn't go anywhere. It was mostly just something I did for fun, and that turned into my like personal channel. So I'm not really going to plug it here for obvious reasons. But honestly, I just wanted to share my love of Star Wars. I think that's the biggest thing, and then the Kyrol thing was like the gateway into doing this type of thing. Because if you go back to my very first video, it's actually the title crawl for Kyrol Jedi Apprentice, and then you'll slowly see me start to do other stuff besides just that.
Were you always the Skywalker? Like for this channel, I know you said you had a personal channel, but was
Yep.
this channel always Skywalker Academy?
Yeah, it was always, it's something I just came up with on the spot, and I liked the ring of it. It sounded good.
So when you created it, was the intention? So the first video is the title crawl for Kyrol,
Yeah.
but did you always know that you were going to take it different directions rather than just your audiobook?
I didn't. It initially just started as the audiobooks. Like I wrote the outline for the whole series. I finished the first book, and I'm like, I just want a place to tell this because I'm writing it. What am I going to do if I finish this whole thing and no one's going to see it? And then over time, I've just like developed the channel into other aspects.
Cool. Yeah. What keeps you motivated to keep publishing content? Because it's not easy. I don't know if you know this. I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but I tend to take a lot of breaks when it comes to content creation.
Uh,
And that's
Sometimes I
partially,
have to take them too.
yeah, and it's just the busyness of life. But what
Yeah.
keeps you motivated and not from
Honestly, it's
burning out?
just it's creating the community. Seeing people who actually enjoy the stuff I make is just nice to see because I never expected that to happen.
Yeah. And you reach 500 subscribers. I mean,
Yeah. I
that's an
think I'm
impressive.
almost at 100 and 530
There you go.
already.
There
Yeah.
you go. Do you pay a lot of attention to your analytics, or are you
Um,
mainly just there for the content?
it's mostly for the content, but I do check the analytics like every week. I always check them to see how they're going, and I always whenever I'm going to post a video, I look when's the most time the audience will be on. So that's
Hmm.
when I can generally post it, and I find
Yeah,
the weekends tend to be the best days. Weekends and Monday,
interesting.
ironically
Monday.
enough.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my analytics, and Monday is not the best. Is certainly not the best day, but
At least generally right now, it's mostly every day is actually pretty much consistent, but the weekends tend to be the highest when almost everyone's on.
yeah, weekends for me as well. Um, but yeah, I
And
mean,
again, we are getting into spring break, so for
yeah,
a lot of people.
and yeah, I could tell from, I started, or Journeyman and I, the first video we posted on this channel, I was in towards the end of 2022, uh, right before the Bad Batch season 2 came out. And you could just tell even in the analytics for the production quality of what we were doing at the time, and it's still not great, don't get me wrong, but it was a lot worse than when we first started. And when I first started making videos, a lot more people were watching Star Wars videos. I feel like even just a couple years ago, and I think right now it's kind of a slow period. I hope with
Yeah.
Andor it brings some more people in, and I hope with Star Wars Celebration and maybe some of the announcements that come with that, they'll start to get some more people in, because I can definitely tell it's a little bit slow on the YouTube Star Wars stuff, but that's not a
Yep.
reason not to keep posting
No, it's
content.
not.
So
It's just you can tell we're at the point where it's like, all right, we're waiting for the next set of stuff.
yeah, and it'll come. I'm really hopeful we get some really cool stuff at Star Wars Celebration, um, especially
I
with the
just want news on
Mandalorian.
Ahsoka.
I know. So, uh, what's your take on Ahsoka? I don't know how much of you watch of the videos on the channel, but if you know, if you do watch them, you probably know we're kind of hoping for Abeloth to come into Ahsoka season 2.
Yeah, I'm hoping for Abeloth in some way, shape, or form. That'd be awesome, but I don't want her to be like a one and done type of character. That's not someone
Mhm.
you just do one time and throw her to the wayside.
Yeah, she's got to be around for a lot of
I mean, you're
projects.
talking about the mother of the Mortis children.
Hmm.
That's not someone you just throw away.
And you got to believe Dave knows that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you got to believe that he's not going to power. I mean, I guess the only thing that they do is they kind of power down and maybe not go the full Abeloth route, but draw
Yeah,
on
I'm
that
gonna say maybe not
inspiration.
make her exactly like how she is, but as long as the essence of the character's there, that's what matters more to me.
Hmm.
And I just kind of want to see a Jedi and a Sith team up to fight her because that's how she's ultimately defeated. It's like you know you're bad when both a Jedi and a Sith have to team up to take you down.
So do you think I mean, let's say they go the Abeloth route, and then
Mhm.
they go full Abeloth. Do you think we see Abeloth kind of get thrown into these, sequel trilogy projects? And not sequel trilogy projects, not what I meant. Like the
The
Ray,
Mandoverse.
the new Jedi Order with Ray and Daisy Ridley. Do you think we could see it go like take it that far?
It's always possible depending on how they do it, but again, it all just depends on how they do it. If they decide we're going to end this character here. That's where we're going to end her. But the thing about Abeloth is you can kind of always say, she's literally a demigod. There's no real way to kill her.
Yeah. Did you read the Fate of not? Is it the Fate of the Jedi? Yeah, the Fate of the Jedi is where Abeloth in the EU. Did you read any of that stuff, or have you picked up mostly just through
I
videos?
have read that, but I've also watched lore video. That was actually my first introduction to Abeloth. It was through someone ranking all the Jedi Grandmasters of the old EU, and when Luke's turned number 1, firstly, that was not a surprise that Luke Skywalker was number 1.
Mm-hmm.
But he started listing some of the feats, and it's like it's like Luke's very presence made Abeloth scared. I was like, wait, who's Abeloth? And then he described her, and I'm like, wait, Luke made her scared?
Yeah, I need to go back because I have not read those. I started
though.
Yeah, I started the first one through the audiobook, which if you didn't know, and if anybody listening didn't know, you can find a lot of Star Wars books on Spotify if you have the paid, like I can't remember how many tiers there are for Spotify now, but whatever package I have.
Free ones too.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some free ones, but if there's quite a few audiobooks on Spotify. Like I said, I'm working through Shadows of the Sith right now, but yeah, the Fate of the Jedi, it was really, really good. I just kind of fell off and then never picked it back up. But yeah, I'm curious on where they'll take Ahsoka. What are your thoughts on like the Mandalorian Grogu? Are you excited for that?
I'm excited for that one. It's like I know some people are like, really, we're still doing this. I was like, well, that's one of the big cornerstones of Disney right now. It's these two characters. Yeah, I personally wouldn't have liked to have seen them reunite in a separate show, but that's something that even Jon Favreau had no control over. So I can't really blame them for that one.
That is one where I feel like the same as Andor. If I go back and watch the Book of Boba Fett, now that I've had some time to step away from it, I feel like it will be better.
I actually enjoyed that one for what it was. I thought it was actually interesting. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't great by any means, but I was like, I was at least entertained. And plus, the Luke episodes kind of saved the series for a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's like the one episode Boba Fett's not even in is the favorite of the series. It was crazy to see Ahsoka pop in there too.
Yeah. Really spit out my drink. I'm like, why are you what?
Yeah, that's like the Disney magic. It felt the same. Certainly not on the same level, but when you see Luke appear in season 2 at the end,
I knew right away who that was the second I saw that.
Did you?
They come in. I'm like, I know who that is. There's only one other Jedi out there, and it's got to be Luke.
Yeah, that was
one of my friends was thinking it was Ezra Bridger. He saw the green lightsaber, and he's like, "Is that Ezra?" And they're like, "Dude, look at the gloved hand."
Yeah, that's a giveaway. I remember when we were watching Journeyman, we questioned there for a second. Is that Ezra? Could it be Ezra? But
it was a slow reveal that day. I remember the rumors and the conversations around that time.
How they kept that a secret, I'm impressed.
I still don't understand how they kept it under wraps. I think that was really when
it's going to be Plo Koon. Like Dave had Plo Koon written in. It's like that way no one would know.
Yeah, I did hear about that as well. I still think that's the biggest like time period where Star Wars, even with season 2, like they should have capitalized on a lot more stuff that I feel like they could have and done it correctly rather than what we got, which is what we got. It is what it is, but I feel like that's one of the biggest missteps is like that time period. Like you had that high and then it just kind of slowly over time.
Yeah.
Well, after season 2 of the Mando, you get Book of Boba Fett, which
generally speaking, it was a downgrade.
It was a downgrade.
They advertised it as one thing, but it kind of turned into something else.
And then after that, you got the Kenobi series. How'd you feel about that, Andrew?
For the most part, I enjoyed it, especially because I knew it was Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, so I had that mindset. It's like it's these actors playing these characters again, so I can get more invested. but I'm still like, this should have been a movie. I know this was supposed to be a movie. Why? I think it was because still when COVID was still at its height, so they couldn't have done that for whatever reason. But it's still like, you could have made this a movie because this would have gotten people to theaters like it was nobody's business.
Well, and then it just kind of goes downhill after that.
Yeah.
With
Well, big
Kenobi.
question I still have about that is, do you find that it, like, Vader and Kenobi should have met in that show in the first place? Or do you still feel like it should have been something different?
I think them meeting again was always like something I think even George had in mind, because if you watch the originals, Vader even talks about, it's like, Obi-Wan once thought as you when Luke was asking him to come back. I was like, and you watch just the originals and prequels, it's like, he never said that. He was coming in bloodthirsty. I think, although I feel like that's something they should have done more with, like Obi-Wan trying to bring him back to ultimately feel like, yeah, this isn't my responsibility anymore. Although that last scene between the two was like perfect.
Yeah, one of the better parts of that
Yeah,
show for
yeah.
sure. And you know, the funny thing is the I tend to forget all of the fact that the Grand Inquisitor was in that show.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, wait a minute, he
And
was
like,
in there.
and Riva, which Riva's in. I mean, looking back now, again, when you're removed from those shows for so long, almost 3 years ago now, you can kind of take a step back and appreciate or just kind of be able to speculate, and it does make you wonder what happened to Riva. Where does
Yeah.
Riva end up?
Like, my biggest thing is like, the one thing I'd never really liked is like, so she lives. No one is supposed to know about Luke. Only
Mhm.
2 people, only like 3
Exactly,
people are
yeah.
supposed to know. And now you have this wild card out there who knows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What were you?
that was one problem. The other problem is I just thought it should have been. I always had this fascination with Kenobi during that time period of, like, he was trying to fight off other beings other than just the Empire, and
Yeah.
it be like we always thought of him and Luke, kind of their show together, being on Tatooine, kind of Obi-Wan raising him essentially
Yeah.
as like an
There's some old
uncle
comics
type
that
figure.
showed some of the stuff he did. It's like Luke,
Right.
like he
And
stops
I
like the
thought that's
water
what they were
raiders.
always going to do.
Yeah. I think if they had done it like that, like the first season
Yeah,
would have been
but-
more about him dealing with all that and his personal PTSD, and then maybe at the end have the cliffhanger of Darth Vader is coming, and then it's like, okay, now we got season 2. Season 2, they're gonna meet, and how does that play out?
Yeah, the writing of the show is just, there's a lot of, overall you look at it and it's kind of like, but even just going down to the minute details of Riva being stabbed several times and
Yeah.
surviving to the trench coat. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues with it.
That one I just find funny, the trench coat, because I'm like, I mean, it's Star Wars. People have worn worse disguises and walked away, so trench coat's
Yeah.
honestly really not surprising at this point. Although I'm like, how do you not recognize
But then
Obi-Wan's face?
Right. But then they have that scene with Vader walking down the road and he's breaking necks, and
Yeah,
it's like, you can do
that's a tonal
that, right?
shift.
Yeah, it's like, where's
it's
the balance
almost
here of what we're trying to do?
right. It's almost like they didn't. They were just taking it in so many different directions. They couldn't decide what they actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Although that was a good scene when he first showed up.
Oh, it was. I mean, it's exactly what you would want to see from him,
Yeah.
right? What we've kind of been waiting for.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how you feel about it, but it's Journeyman and I always have kind of said that they go from that scene, which I mean, quality wise, I would say the show lacks a little bit of quality. Their budget was, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, But
In fact, the
you know,
Acolyte had a bigger budget. That's what's more surprising. It's like this show has a bigger budget than the show
Yeah.
featuring Darth Vader and Obi-Wan.
and Andor, right? Andor had
Yeah.
a massive budget compared to Kenobi, so you can't blame it just on that. But like quality wise, the show just does not. It almost, for me personally, takes me out of the universe of how. I won't use the same word as earlier, but it is just does feel kind of bland. I've always described it just kind of feels like a fan fiction. Um, and it's crazy the work that fans are able to do. I just recently saw a what was it called? The Star Wars 212.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
Did you
that
see
was
that?
fantastic.
It's obviously animated, and it's just crazy what fans are starting to do. And honestly, I think it's going to start giving Disney a run for their money, and they're going to have to kind of step up their game a little bit.
Yeah, it's like if this is what the fans clearly want, and at a certain point, we're just going to make it ourselves if you're not going to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it pushes them in both of those aspects, right? It's like the fans are telling us what they want, and not only are they telling us, they're literally showing us, and it looks better than the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so I think it will push them. I'm really curious what Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars Theory has been creating Vader Episode 2 for years at this
Oh,
point.
yeah.
I mean, what is he cooking up with that? I mean,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like I remember seeing Vader Part 1, and I was like, okay, I'm actually really invested into this, despite it's clear where the budget went, and I'm totally okay with that. But I'm still like, I'm in this for the story. I'm not in this for the effects, all that. I'm here to see Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we got.
Yeah, that's what you get with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to see where he takes that for sure, because it's we've been working on it for a long time.
So where do you think, or what do you think the new direction with Kathy leaving now would be?
It really all depends on who replaces her. I've always been of the mindset, do what DC Studios did with James Gunn, and I forget who the other person is. It's like you have two creative heads, one who handles the business side and one who handles the story side. You have them work in tandem, and before a project gets greenlit, a script has to be written, and they have to read it, and both have to sign off on it. That's kind of how I always feel about it. It's like you can't just greenlight a project. You have to have something tangible with it. That's what George did with Star Wars. He had not just the script, but he had the artwork. Just something tangible.
Something to see, the vision behind the project for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll probably know in a couple of months for sure.
Yeah. I know some people are like, oh, we want Dave. And it's like, we all want Dave, but I'm like, would he want to do it? That's the bigger thing. He seems to be more on, I want to just tell the stories. If I'm handling all this too, I don't get to tell the stories.
Yeah, and to me, it's one of those things where if he does take that position, I don't see him becoming president of Lucasfilm in any other capacity other than being co-president of Lucasfilm with somebody else. Because I just don't.
Because he's not the business savvy person.
No. Yeah, I think that there's got to be somebody else, because even if he seems like a smart guy, so I think he could figure it out, but it's not.
I mean, George had to wing it too, so.
But it's not that, right? It's the fact that he's better off telling stories, and that job is not a job where you just strictly tell stories.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
Well, it's just like fans have to really think about what kind of greener grass do we want? Do we want Dave telling the stories, or do we want someone that we probably don't trust as well writing those stories?
Or someone brand new who we don't have no information on.
Calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's just the calculation that fans have to really take into consideration, whether we're not making the decision anyway, so it's not like really on us, but like I think that's what people have to take into consideration when, wanting a different person.
Yeah. And I always see it kind of like a football or a sports team. It's like you have your person who owns the team, and like that's Disney, but then you have your captain, who, in this intents and purposes, is Kathleen Kennedy. She's the captain. She's steering the ship. Ultimately, every decision, every win, every loss, ultimately comes to her. So you can't just blame just Disney or just her. It's both.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it comes down to the ownership piece of it. She's the head of the studio, so some of the blame has to come on her, and then obviously Disney. The blame has to be shifted up, and I feel like we're kind of in a pivotal moment, especially with the numbers coming out with the Daredevil series right now.
Oh yeah,
I think
that's like blowing up.
I
I
think
haven't seen it yet, but I
yeah,
saw the numbers.
I think the Disney Plus experiment is over.
Yeah,
And it's turning, at least for franchises like Star Wars and Marvel, it's not working.
I say if it's written as a show, make it a show. If it's written as a movie, make it a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to turn it into a show.
Yep. Andor,
They're different formats.
exactly. I think Andor season 1, as much as I'm liking it the second go around, would be much better received in a movie style format.
Yeah.
But then again, shows like Ahsoka, as much as I would like to see them package these projects packaged as a movie, because
I mean, the Patterson cut shows how it could be a movie, and it's like, yeah, you can take out some of the stuff and it works as a movie, but but it was made as a show. It was written as a show.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they've kind of learned their lesson, and after Ahsoka season 2, we can kind of get away from the TV show format and shift back into movies. But we'll see. We will see.
Here's hoping, fingers crossed.
Yeah, there's always hope. That's what we as Star Wars fans have. So
I'm starting to realize this about Disney Plus is I like it for the catalog purposes of going back and watching stuff, but like as the content or as the experience of it, I just, even if it is a TV show, I'm kind of like, I'd rather, instead of pay for the Disney Plus stuff, like let me go pay for it in a theater and like let me go watch it there with other people at this
Get
point,
the cinematic
rather
experience.
than just well, whether it is a TV show or whatever, like let me go pay for every episode, like a lump sum payment, and just give me tickets for each of them. Like that's still the same thing instead of watching it at home. Like yes, you get the comfortability of home, but at this point, like it's not that fun of an experience when you're watching it by yourself.
Yeah, and even sometimes with some of the shows Star Wars shows or just shows in general, I watch with some of them with my family. Like Cobra Kai, I finished that when it came out, and obviously my parents hadn't really watched most of it, so they were really confused about certain things that were happening, but B, at certain points they were just like totally lost. And like, this is clear, you have to see the whole thing to understand what's happening. And I think that's really annoying for some of the Star Wars shows. Like, I'm just like with Ahsoka. If you're just going into Ahsoka blind, you are going to be so confused. Like, if this is your first Star Wars thing, it's like, who's Ahsoka? What's her relationship with Anakin? Or who even is Anakin? What was this Clone Wars? What was all this? Who are these rebels? Why is Ezra and Thrawn important?
One of my larger gripes with that show is that exact thing. Is I feel like they tried to market it and say it would be fine if you hadn't seen some of the previous animated.
Some of it makes sense. Like, you technically don't need to see the Clone Wars to understand Ahsoka's character, but it's heavily suggested.
Yeah. I mean, it works. It's just I would argue that it's more imperative to watch Rebels than it is the Clone Wars for Ahsoka.
Yeah,
but
because it's basically Rebels season 5,
pretty much. I mean, yeah, and I hope like we were talking about earlier, hope we get some type of animated series announcement at Star Wars Celebration, but we'll know in a couple months. So
please be something good.
Please be something good. Yeah, we can have fingers crossed.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, Andrew, I appreciate you coming on. I was super excited to get to talk to you.
I was been waiting for this all week.
That's awesome. I love to hear it, and I hope you keep up the good work with the Kyrol stuff because
Yeah.
I'm heavily invested in it. I'm working, like I said, working through the second book right now, and when are you planning on holding auditions and starting to work on the third book?
As of this moment, auditions for the third book, I'm still getting auditions. I need more, especially females. I gotten some male characters, but I need a
Hmm.
few more. Need the female characters to really start to figure out who I want for each character. So I don't really have a set deadline date for when auditions are over. Once I feel like I've gotten enough to where I can decide casting, that's when auditions will be over, and I will make an announcement when that happens, so people aren't submitting something like a month later thinking I'm still doing it when I'm not. But if I have another character that I need, I'll make an announcement about that too. It's like, hey, I need you to voice this person. Anyone got any voices?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and certainly anything that you want to send over to me, I'll put in the description of this video so
Okay.
that people can find obviously your channel, but the Kyrol series or
Yeah.
a link.
I'll probably send the full playlist because it's a lot easier than sending each individual playlist.
Yeah, yeah, you
That's why I
can.
created the big ones, like for future references. That way you don't have to figure out which one's in order. Because I have a question about that. It's like, what's the order to watch these? And it's like, it's Jedi Apprentice, then New Horizon, then Rising Shadow, and then
Mhm.
so on and so on.
Yeah, and it's genius because you really from a YouTube content creator perspective, you can really get your watch time up with putting them in a playlist like that because they
Yeah.
just keep going. And I mean, you're really talented, buddy. I mean, the
Thank
way
you.
that package it, the production quality, and it really does keep you on the edge of your seat. So you're doing a really good job. Yeah, send everything over to me, and I'll put it in the description of the video. And yeah, I will put it all there, and then I hope after you're able to start episode the third book, you get it all done and everything. I'd love to have you come back on so we can chat again, and hopefully at some point we can partner on hopefully creating a story one
Yep.
day because I'd love to do
You
that as
just
well.
send me any information you got on that, and just let the creative juices flow.
Yeah, we will just have to hope we don't get writer's block, and we'll try
Oh,
to make
don't get me started on writer's block.
it's the hardest part is just starting to type sometimes.
Oh yeah. It's like just
Yeah.
trying to get those first words. Like I will always save the title crawl for last for that very reason because it's the hardest thing for me to write.
Hmm.
Like how do
Yeah.
I be descriptive but not too descriptive?
Yeah, it's just always getting started with those first few words is tough. But yeah, I'll be in contact with you because I'd love to do something
All right.
in the future. So I appreciate it. I hope we could talk again soon.
Yep. It was a pleasure to be on here. Nice to meet you, Journeyman.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you as well.
cool. All right. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.